The butcher's blades had hung the jackdaw from a rusted marlin spike through his jawbone and left him for the quayside scavengers. This was the 17th murdered gang member the hooded man had seen tonight. A slow night by Bilgewater standards, at least since Corsair King had fallen. Red-fanged wharf rats had already eaten most of the hanged man's feet and were perched on the stacked creels to tear at the soft meat of his calves. The hooded man kept walking. "Help me." The words were wet, squeezed up through a throat clogged with blood. The hooded man spun, hands reaching towards the weapon slung on his wide belt. Incredibly, the jackdaw was still alive on the bone-handled spike. The hook stuck deep into the wooden frame of the loading crane. No way to get the jackdaw down without tearing his skull into splinters. "Help me," he said again. The hooded man paused, considering the jackdaw's request. "What for?" he said at last. "Even if I get you down from there, you'll be dead by morning." The jackdaw carefully lifted his hand to a concealed pocket in his patchwork jerkin and removed a golden kraken. Even in the dim light, the hooded man saw it was genuine. The scavengers hissed and raised their hackles as he approached. Wharf rats weren't large, but meat as warm as this wasn't a prize to be surrendered lightly. They bared long needle-like fangs, spitting diseased goblets of saliva. He kicked one rat over the water. He crushed a second underfoot. They snapped and bit, but nimble footwork kept any from tasting his flesh, his every movement smooth and precise. He killed another 3 before the rest scattered into the shadows, sullen eyes glaring red in the darkness. The hooded man stood beside the jackdaw. His features were hidden, but the light of a rogue's moon suggested a face that no longer smiled. "Death is here for you," he said. "Embrace it. Safe in the knowledge I will ensure it's final." He reached into his coat and withdrew a glittering spike of silver, 2 handspans long and engraved with curling symbols spiraling along its length. It resembled an ornate leatherworker's awl. He placed the tip under the dying man's chin. The man's eyes widened, and his hand scrambled at the hooded man's sleeve as he looked out over the vast expanse of ocean. The sea was a black mirror shimmering with the glow of myriad candles. Quayside braziers and lamplights warped through salvaged glass from 1,000 cliffside hulks. "You know what lurks over the horizon. You know what horror it brings, and yet you tear at each other like rabid beasts. It makes no sense to me." He turned and hammered the heel of his palm against the flattened haft of the awl, driving the spike into the man's brain. A last corpse rattle in the jackdaw's pain ended. The gold coin fell from the man's fingers and rolled into the ocean with a soft splash. The man withdrew the spike and wiped it clean on the jackdaw's ragged shirt. He turned it into the sheath inside his coat and removed a golden needle and a length of silver thread dipped in waters drawn from an Ionian spring. Working with the skill of one who had performed this service many times before, he sewed the man's eyes and lips shut. As he worked, he spoke words taught to him a lifetime ago, words first ill-spoken by a long-dead king. "Now the dead cannot claim you," he said as he finished his work and replaced his implements. "Maybe not, but we ain't leaving empty-handed. Sure we ain't," said a voice behind the hooded man. He turned and pulled back his hood to reveal skin, the color and texture of aged mahogany, cheekbones that were angular and patrician. His dark hair was bound into a long scalp lock, and eyes that had seen horror beyond measure surveyed the newcomers. 6 men, dressed in aprons of blood-stiffened leather, cut to display limbs of corded muscle wrapped with tattooed thorns. Each carried a serrated hook and wore belts hung with a variety of meatworkers' knives. Petty thugs, made bold by the fall of the tyrant who'd ruled Bilgewater with an iron fist. With him gone, the city was in chaos as rival gangs sought to carve out fresh territories. Their approach hadn't been stealthy. Hobnailed boots, awful stench, and muttered curses had announced their presence long before they'd revealed themselves.
"I don't mind a coin going to the bearded lady, sure I don't,"
said the biggest of the butchers, a man with a gut so prodigious it was a wonder he could get close enough to a carcass to cut it at all.
"But one of ours killed old Knockjohn there. Fair and square, sure they did. So that gold serpent was ours. Do you want to die here?" "You know who you're talking to?" "No. Do you?" "Go on then. Tell me so I'll carve it on the rock I'll use to sink your bones."
"My name is Lucian," he said, whipping back his long frock coat and drawing a pair of pistols wrought of knapped stone and burnished metals, unknown to even the most reckless alchemist of Zorn. A bolt of coruscating light punched the fat butcher from his feet, with a scorched hole where his grotesquely swollen heart had been. Lucian's second pistol was smaller, more finely crafted, and fired a searing line of yellow fire that cut another of the butchers in half from collarbone to groin. Like the wharf rats before, they fled, but Lucian picked them off one by one. Each burst of light was a killing shot. In the blink of an eye, all 6 butchers lay dead. He sheathed his pistols and pulled the coat back around him. Others would be drawn by the sound and fury of his work, and he had no time to save these men's souls from what was coming. Lucian sighed. It had been a mistake to stop for the jackdaw, but perhaps the man he had once been was not entirely lost. A memory threatened to surface as he shook his head.
"I cannot see him again,"
said Lucian. "He isn't strong enough to kill the Chain Warden."